Hi all, and welcome to my new video related to Bitcoin education. And this video, the topic will be the number zero and the absolute scarcity of Bitcoin. So the connection between the discovery of zero and the absolute scarcity of Bitcoin. The disclaimer is always that this presentation is for educational purpose only, and it is not a financial advice. The reference is the article The Number Zero and Bitcoin. The author is Robert Breedlove, one of the most influential people on Bitcoin world. He has also a channel called What is Money in YouTube, very followed. I'm watching many of his videos. So I really recommend firstly to read the article and secondly to watch also his videos. He did also at least nine videos with Michael Saylor 1 year ago, and they are really interesting video about money and Bitcoin. So Bitcoin and zero. Let's start. In the history of culture, the discovery of zero will always stand out as one of the greatest single achievements of the human race. This was said from Tobias Danzig, The Language of Science. Many people believe that Bitcoin is just one of the thousand of crypto assets. This is true in the same way as the number zero is just one of the infinite series of numbers. In fact, in reality, Bitcoin is special, and so is zero. Each is an invention which led to a discovery that fundamentally reshaped its overarching system for Bitcoin. For Bitcoin, the system is money, and for zero, it is mathematics. Since money and math are mankind two universal languages, both Bitcoin and zero are critical constructs for civilization. So here we can see already the first connection. There are thousands of numbers, but zero is special. There are thousands of coins, but Bitcoin is special. Let's move on. For most of history, mankind, in fact, had no concept of zero. An understanding of it is not innate to us. In fact, a symbol for it had to be invented and continuously taught to successive generations. In fact, no one is going to a shop for zero apples. In fact, it's zero in as abstract conception, and it is not discernible in the physical world. Many ancient civilizations developed rudimental numeral systems. You see in 2000 BC, the Babylonians, who failed to conceptualize zero, used two symbols in different arrangement to create unique numerals between 1 and 60. And also, the heritage of this is that now 1 hour is 60 minutes and 1 minute is 60 seconds. But they failed to conceptualize zero. The first explicit and arithmetic use of zero came from ancient Indian and Cambodian cultures. In the 17th century, the Indian mathematician Brahmagupta developed terms for zero in addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. This was the first time that zero appeared. And then it was passed through trade networks eastward into China and westward into the Islamic and Arabic culture. Europe was still the dark age of the first centuries of Middle Age. It was this Western advance of zero which ultimately led to the inception of the Indo-Arabic numeral system, the most common means of symbolic number representation in the world today. In fact, the zero reached Europe roughly 300 years later in the High Middle Age, between 1000 and 1300 are the High Middle Age. It was met with a strong ideological resistance, facing opposition from users of well-established Roman numeral numbers. Zero struggled to gain ground in Europe. And this is also, you can make a comparison with Bitcoin. So zero, the number um, with zero, so were much more easy to calculate. So were an advance of technology versus the Roman numbers. But still, there were strong opposition because people were saying, no, the Roman numbers are the better. But the Hindu calculation performed using the Indo-Arabic system is significantly more straightforward than with Roman numerals. An energy efficient system have a tendency to win out in the long run, as we saw when the steam engine outcompete animal sourced power or when capitalism prevailed over socialism. So even if at the beginning there is opposition, in the long run, the system who are energy efficient, more energy efficient in the long term, in the long run, they win. With trade, network proliferating and productivity escalating in tandem. So starting the trade, starting also more productivity and growing prospect of wealth creation incentivize merchants to become increasingly competitive, pushing them to always search for an edge over others. So the competition was higher, more trades, more merchant, and computation record keeping with a zero-based numeral system was qualitatively easier, quantitatively faster, and less prone to error. So despite Europe's resistance, this new numeral system simply could not be ignored anymore. Like its distant progeny Bitcoin would later be, zero was an unstoppable idea whose time had come. At the beginning there was opposition, but then there were trades, merchant, the time came, and zero became popular. Zero first functions is, let's now see the functions of zero. The first function is a placeholder in our numeric system, as for example the zero present in the number 1104, 1104. A zero let us perform calculation with less effort, fostering productivity growth. That's the first. Second, it is the midpoint between any positive number and its negative counterpart, like +2 and -2. Before, the concept of zero and negative numbers were not used, as there were not conception of nothing as a number, much less than nothing. So there was no zero and no negative numbers. Zero third function is a facilitator for fractions of radius. For instance, the ancient Egyptians, whose numerical system lacked a zero, also the Egyptians had no zero, had an extremely cumbersome way of handling fractions. Instead of thinking of 3/4 as a ratio 3 to 4 as we do today, they saw it as a sum of one of half plus 1/4. And so it's a much more difficult way to reason. An ability to more efficiently handle ratio directly contributed to mankind later development of rationality, a logic-based way of thinking at the root of measure movements such as the Renaissance, the Reformation, and the Enlightenment. To truly grasp the strange logic of zero, we must start with its point of origin, the philosophy from which it was born. In fact, which was the philosophy was the Buddhism, because zero arose in the ancient East as the epitome of this deeply philosophical and experimental concept of absolute emptiness. In fact, Buddha himself was a known mathematician. But despite being discovered in a spiritual state, zero is a profoundly practical concept. Perhaps it is the best understood as a fusion of philosophy one side, the emptiness, and pragmatism. You can easily make calculation. By traversing across zero into the territory of negative numbers, we encounter the imaginary numbers. Furthermore, zero gave us the concept of infinity, and this is extremely important, which was notably absent from the minds of the ancient Greek logicians. Zero and infinity are a geometric reflection of one another and can transpose themselves in a flash of mathematical permutation. So once we had zero, if we divide 1 divided by 0, we get the infinity. So 0 also introduced the concept of infinity. The universe of ancient Greeks, in fact, was founded on the philosophical tenets of Pythagoras, Aristotle, and Ptolemy. Central to the conception of the cosmos was the percept that there is no void, no nothingness, no zero, so no emptiness. The church claim to absolute sovereignty was critically dependent of the Pythagorean model as the dominant institution over Earth, which was in their view the center of universe. Necessary held dominion in God's universe. So there was no zero, and the church took this word as the word we live, and the earth in the center of the universe. Standing as symbol for both the void and the infinite, zero was heretical to the church. Centuries later, a similar dynamic would unfold in the discovery of absolute scarcity of money, which is dissident to the dominion of the Fed. So one side it was zero to the church, and now it's this Bitcoin to the Fed. That is the false church of modernity. Centuries later, a similar dynamic would, yeah, no, sorry, an infinite, the false church of modernity, view the center of university. An infinite universe meant they were at least a vast multitude of planets, many of which likely had their own population and churches. Earth was no longer the center of the universe, so why should the church have universal dominion? In a grand ideological shift that foreshadowed the invention of Bitcoin centuries later, zero became the idea that broke the church's grip on humanity, just as absolute scarcity of money is breaking the Fed's stranglehold on the world today. In an echo of history, as modern can once again hear the discovery of nothing begin to change everything. So as the discovery of nothing, zero, change everything, it changed everything. Now the discovery of absolute scarcity from Bitcoin is changing again everything. Indoctrinated in the church dogma, Christianity initially refused to accept zero, as it was linked to a primal fear of the void. Zero's inexorable connection to nothingness and chaos made it fearsome concept in the eyes of most Christians at the time. But zero capacity to support honest weight and measures, a core biblical concept, would prove more important than the countermeasure of the church. In a world being built on trade, merchants needed zero for superior arithmetic utility. As trade began to flourish and generate unprecedented level of wealth in the world, math moved from poor practical application to even more abstracted function. So even if the Christianity was the church was against, they needed zero for superiority of arithmetic calculation, and that's why zero became popular. Infatti, despite its superior utility for business, government despises zero at the beginning. For example, as I said, in 1299, Florence banned the Hindu-Arabic numeral system. But as with many profound innovations, zero faced vehement resistance from entrenched power structures that were threatened by its existence. Carrying on loyalty, Italian merchants continued to use the zero-based numerical system and even began using it to transmit encrypted messages. Zero, in fact, was essential to this encryption system, which is why the word cipher, which originally means zero, came to mean secret code. That's also an interesting topic. The critical of zero to ancient encryption system is yet another aspect of his contribution to Bitcoin ancestral heritage. Eventually, zero became the cornerstone of calculus, an innovative system of mathematics that enabled people to contend with even smaller unit approaching zero, but cunningly avoided the logic trap of having to divide by zero. This new system gave mankind myriad new ways to comprehend and grasp his surroundings. Diverse disciplines such as chemistry, engineering, and physics all depend on calculus to fulfill their function in the world today. Without zero, we would not have had chemistry, engineering, and physics. Zero punched a hole. What happened in the modern? So let's see now in the modernity, the age of ones and zeros. Zero punched a hole and created a vacuum in the framework of mathematics and shattered Aristotelian philosophy, on which the power of the church was premised. Today, in fact, in the same way, today, in a similar way, Bitcoin is punching a hole and creating a vacuum in the market for money. It is killing Keynesian economics, which is propagandistic power base of the nation state along with its apparatus of theft, the central bank. Zero was essential to the development of digital tools like the personal computer, the internet, and Bitcoin. Amazingly, all modern miracles made possible by digital technologies can be traced back to the invention of figure for numeric nothingness by an ancient Indian mathematician. Brahmagupta gave the world a real something for nothing, a generosity Satoshi would emulate several centuries later. Let's do some few seconds break. Many mistakenly believe that Bitcoin could be disrupted by any any one of the thousands of alternative crypto assets in the marketplace today. The disruption of Bitcoin is in reality is extremely unlikely. Bitcoin is a path-dependent, one-time invention. Its critical breakthrough is the discovery of absolute scarcity, a monetary property never before and never again achievable by mankind. like the invention of zero, which led to the discovery of nothing for as something. In mathematics and other domains, Bitcoin is the catalyst of a worldwide paradigmatic phase change, which some have started calling the Great Awakening. What numeral is to number and zero is devoid of mathematics, Bitcoin is to absolute scarcity for money. Each is a symbol that allows mankind to apprehend a latent reality. In the case of money, time. More than just a new monetary technology, Bitcoin is an entirely new economic paradigm, an uncompressible base money protocol for a global, digital, non-state economy. To better understand the profundity of this, we first need to understand the nature of path dependence. In fact, Bitcoin was launched into the world as a one-of-a-kind technology, a non-state digital money that is issued on a perfectly fixed, diminishing, and predictable schedule. It was strategically released into the wild, into an online group of cryptographers, at a time when no comparative technology existed. Big blockchain was not existing at that time. Bitcoin organic adoption path and mining network expansion are a non-repeatable sequence of events. As a thought experiment, consider that if a new Bitcoin was launched today, it would exhibit weak chain security early on, as its mining network and hash rate would have to start from scratch. Today, in a world that is aware of Bitcoin, this new Bitcoin with comparatively weak chain secure would inevitably be attacked, whether these were incumbent projects seeking to defend their head start, international banking cartels, or even nation state, because the hash rate will be not that high, easy to attack, while Bitcoin is not anymore easy to attack. In fact, today, um, one second. Okay, a distant descendant of zero, the invention of Bitcoin represents the discovery of absolute scarcity for money, an idea as equally unstoppable. So, the invention of Bitcoin is an idea as unstoppable as there was the idea of zero. Similar to the discovery of the absolute nothingness symbolized by zero, the discovery of absolute scarce money symbolized by Bitcoin is special. Gold became money because out of the monetary metals, it had the most inelastic or relatively scarce money supply. In the game of money, the objective has always been to hold the most relative scarce monetary metal, gold. Now the goal is to occupy the most territory on the absolute scarce monetary network called Bitcoin. So this concept, absolute scarcity, is something new, as zero was something new hundreds of years ago. In the same way that the number zero enables our numeric systems to scale and more easily to perform calculation, so too does money give us an economy the ability to socially scale by simplifying trade economic calculation. Said also more simply, scarcity is essentially essential to the utility of money, and a zero growth terminal money supply represent perfect scarcity, which make Bitcoin as near a perfect monetary technology as mankind has ever had. Absolute scarcity is monumental monetary breakthrough. Since money is valued according to reflexibility, meaning that investor perception of its future exchangeability influences present valuation, Bitcoin's perfectly predictable and finite future supply underpins an unprecedented rate of expansion in market capitalization. So this is also a very important concept. Bitcoin has a programmed scarcity, and the fact that you know the rule, you know how it will be, you know which will be the future value. Maybe not now because it's very volatile, but in the future, it makes it more appealing to be money. The invention of Bitcoin represent. Now let's start with the summary. The invention of Bitcoin represents the discovery of absolute scarcity or absolute irreproducibility, which occur due to a particular sequence of idiosyncratic events that cannot be reproduced. Any attempt to introduce an absolutely scarce or diminished supply money into the world would likely collapse into Bitcoin, as we saw with Bitcoin Cash fork. Absolute scarcity is a one-time discovery. This is very important. It was not discovered, it is discovered, and the next one will be just a copy. Just like heliocentrism or any other major scientific paradigm shift. In a world where Bitcoin already exists, a successful launch via proof of work system is no longer possible due to path dependence. Yet another reason why Bitcoin cannot be replicated or disrupted by another crypto asset using this consensus mechanism. At this point, it seems absolute scarcity for money is truly a one-time discovery that cannot be disrupted, any more than the concept of zero can be described. So zero cannot be disrupted as well, absolute scarcity from Bitcoin. Zero arose in the world as an unstoppable idea because its time had come. It broke the dominion of the church and put an end to its monopolization over access to knowledge and the gates to heaven. The resultant movement, the separation of church and state, reinvigorated self-sovereignty into the world, setting the individual firmly as the cornerstone of the state. Rising from the church's ashes came a nation-state model founded on a sound property rights, rule of law, and free market money, also called hard money. With this new age came an unprecedented boom in scientific advancement, wealth creation, and worldwide well-being. In the same way, Bitcoin and its underlying discovering of absolute scarcity for money is an idea whose time has come. Emerging from the depth below first principle, Bitcoin is the zeroth principle of money, is shattering the seeds of central bank on our financial sovereignty. It is invoking a new movement, the separation of money and state, as its revolutionary banner, as it is restoring natural law in a world ravaged by a mega wealth parasite, the Fed. So, as the zero make it possible the separation between the church and the state, Bitcoin will allow the separation between money and the state. It will allow our society to flourish. Only unstoppable ideas can break otherwise immovable institutions. Zero brought the church to its knees, and Bitcoin is bringing the false church of the Fed into the sunlight of its long-awaited judgment day. Last but not least, last slide, both Zero and Bitcoin are emblematic of the void, a realm of pure potentiality from which all things spring forth into being, the nothingness from which everything effervesces, and into which all possibility finally collapses. Zero and Bitcoin are unstoppable ideas gifted to mankind, gestures made in the spirit of something for nothing. In a world run by central bank with zero accountability, a cabal that used the specious prospect of infinite cash to promise us everything, thereby raising the specter of hyperinflation, nothingness may prove to be the greatest gift we could ever receive. And the author finishes saying, thanks to Brahmagut and Satoshi Nakamoto for your generosity. So I think for me this is a great article, and as you see, as I discussed also in other presentation, when a person really understands Bitcoin, he starts to discuss about philosophical way. And in this article, Robert Breedlove is really philosophical and is pointing out many times that Bitcoin is something that will change the world for the better. Many thanks for having watched the video, and see you in one of the next one. Bye.